in the 5 o'clock hour. We're joined by Dave Wilson, ESPN. He's been with us before, a great storyteller who was at the Masters at Augusta National and joins us on 365 Sports. He just landed from his flight back to Atlanta and on his way home for the first time to see his wife and kids in 11 days. Dave, thank you very much for your time. Can you try to just explain just the overall atmosphere of yesterday and the roars of the crowd? And I don't even know how many times you've covered the Masters, but just your overall impressions.
Well, this was my first Masters to ever cover, so it was not a bad start, I would say.
Man.
But I don't know if you know this, Smokey, but I haven't written a lot of golf stories dating back to my days in the Roy Flair Country Club in Kilgore. That's probably the last place I covered a golf tournament. So this is a little up the degree of difficulty here a little bit for me. But it was, a remarkable atmosphere, and it's really fascinating because there's such a sentimental. I think there were so many people pulling for Rory that it's just like the galleries or the patrons. I'm sorry, I don't want to get in trouble, but they live and breathe with that guy riding the roller coaster, and it was you could hear it. I went out. I'd been pretty busy the previous 3 days, and so yesterday I got to walk quite a bit while we were waiting on it, and got to go walk Amen Corner and walk all that stuff. And I mean, what a privilege that is! But you can just hear the roars from across the golf course, and you can feel it. And you just wait and turn, and you look at the leaderboards, the old manual leaderboards, and then everyone sees Rory's score change or Bryson's score change or whoever, and then the whole place lights up again at the other hole. So it's really cool. I mean, the idea that nobody has phones, everybody is getting it all at the same time, and sort of the old manual scoreboards is really one of the most unique things in sports.
Dave, could you feel palpable emotion throughout the course? Like as you went around, because of the way, like it wasn't, a lot of these things can just be coronations, right? A guy, he's 4 strokes up and he just goes and he wins, and that's cool because you get to see a guy do something that's really rare to do. But this one was absolutely one of the most entertaining sports days I've ever had. Yeah,
I mean, the idea that, is he gonna break through, or is he gonna let it slip again? And he even said, I thought he was very honest in his press conference afterward, where he even said, look, there was parts of the day late in the day where I'm like, oh no, did I let it slip away again? And I think there was this really, I guess I haven't covered much golf. I mean, I was there to find stories and look around and kind of be fresh eyes on an old tradition, and which was one of the coolest, assignments you could ever have. And so I was really, marveled at just how much people were living and dying by everything this guy did. There was a very strong, you could hear the groans or the oh no, every time when the ball went in the water on 15, and everybody's oh no, it's just since it's an individual sport, we're used to, I cover college football most of the time, and half the team hates the guy and half the team loves him. In this case, it's very much a communal experience. And so you could definitely feel it, and it was sort of a tension all day long.
Dave, that's the tournament, but you did a handful of stories, which is what you do do well, very well, including one on the Friday. Was it Friday night or Saturday night? So DeChambeau is in the middle of the mix. My goodness, at one point yesterday, led the tournament early on after Rory double bogeyed one and then Bryson birdied 2. But I did see the story about him walking around the neighborhood late at night, and he just walked into the backyard with some people and started doing putting lessons. What was going on with that?
Yeah, so when I first got to Augusta, I met some folks, and they were like, "You got to meet Uncle Paul. He's like the craziest guy in Augusta." And that's what you look for when you go out someplace you haven't been before. You want to know some characters and you want to know some stories. And I I said, well, I want to meet this guy. He sounds interesting. He's an artist. He has a Guinness Book of World Record for the longest skateboard jump. Broke Tony Alva's old record. He's a kickboxer. He has all kinds of stuff. And they're like, he's got this huge putting green in his backyard. So I said, I want to meet him. And they said, I said, maybe tonight I can meet him. And they didn't reply to me. I got back to the house pretty late from covering the tournament. And then at like 10:30 at night, I got a text saying, you're not going to believe what just happened. Bryson DeChambeau just showed up in our backyard and was and stayed for an hour. And I'm like, what? Why did you tell me this? You know, but anyway, I went over there the next day and they just told me the whole story. Bryson and his buddies were walking down the street. So it's a very out of the way neighborhood. It's not the nicest neighborhood you've ever been in. They're like, I have no idea why he was walking down the street here. They got home from a party. They're lifelong Augusta residents. So this is like the big week for everything for everybody there. They got home from a party. He turned the lights on his backyard for his big putting green. And he said they saw these 3 kids on the bridge, their heads whip around and they walk down the driveway and the guy walks up and says, you know, he says, hey, do y'all play golf? And they said, he said, yeah, my name is Bryson DeChambeau. And he said, yeah, right. You know, I'm Jack Nicklaus. And then he said he walked out of the dark and he looked at me and said, hey, what's Bryson DeChambeau? And so he just came back and he played with this really goofy looking putter and he was hitting this really extremely high loft wedge, 72-degree wedge, you know, just hitting bombs in the sky and just kind of getting loose. And he said he couldn't sleep. And the guy said, look, I can't blame you. You're in the hunt at the Masters. So really one of the coolest, you know, little fables, I think, as part of the history of Augusta. You know, when a guy that's on the leaderboard for coming into Saturday shows up at your house at 10 o'clock at night, it's pretty cool.
I don't know if anybody has ever repaired his image, or not repaired it, has changed the image of him than Bryson DeChambeau has done in the last couple of years with his podcast, trying to break par with anybody that he just picks, hitting balls over the roof of his house on a green, and just the way he embraces the fans. And a lot of fans did not like him, especially after he bolted for the Live Golf Tour.
Yeah, I think there's you know, I've talked to a lot of people that knew him at SMU back in the day, and they just said, you know, the guy was kind of finding out who he was. And in a lot of ways, you know, he's very sort of, you know, scientifically based. He's almost like an engineer. And so I think there's a different personality there. And guys like that sometimes don't understand how they come off to others. And I think it's a maturity thing, you know. And so I think he has come a long way, and he realizes the old adage, you know, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar kind of thing. And he's been really, you know, he's running along the fence, the rope line, high-fiving the patrons there, and he's pumping his fist, and he's talking about what a great rivalry it's going to be on Sunday. So I think he knows how to sell, obviously, with his YouTube stuff. And yeah, it's added a little you know, a little rivalry action to the tour, you know. And then he says yesterday after the you know, match that Roy didn't talk to him all day, which, you know, then it starts a whole new level of intrigue of like what's going on between Roy and Bryson. And golf is kind of made for these soap operas.
But that's not unusual, though,
Tiger used to ice everybody out.
Yeah.
I mean, now that he's gotten older and he's more beaten down and doesn't play, he talks a lot more on the course than ever before, but he used to ice Nick Faldo did too, though. It's not like that's new for a golfer.
I think it's more the fact that he just came out and said it. The way he said it was like, you know, he didn't talk, he wouldn't say a word to me, you know, however he said it. And I think that raised a lot of eyebrows just in terms of the fans that love these kind of like little feuds.
I almost felt like it hurt his feelings. I'm not saying he's saying that, but it almost like Bryson is now like that puppy that wants to be petted and run around and everybody pat him on the butt, whatever. And I think that I thought that Bryson in the same last group was very similar to what was going to happen what did happen in 96 with Faldo and Norman. And off the top of the tournament, the final round, it appeared that was the case, but no. Rory was able to bounce back multiple times. Dave Wilson with ESPN. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, well, you know, the first 4 holes, it was already a slugfest. It looked like it was going to be like that, and then it turned so quickly. So what a day, and what a first time to get to do it.
Now, go ahead, Paul.
I was going to ask about John Daly.
Yeah, you got to do this. I remember going by there once when I did visit Augusta, but go ahead, Paul, on John Daly.
So John Daly at a Hooters is that's brand synergy. If I've ever seen it before. So What was that like, encountering John Daly in what is ultimately his natural habitat?
Yeah, it's funny though. The thing I took away from it, like we've all seen the sign. You see it every year on Instagram and on social media about, John Daly hanging out at Hooters. But like, I'm like you. I'm like, what's it like to hang out with John Daly at Hooters? And I had to talk to some PR people and schmooze a little bit, and they ended up, they were kind of like, what are you trying to do? And I was like, dude, like, I just want to see what the scene is. That's it. And so you spend all day there, and I spent like 4 or 5 hours there. What was really fascinating to me is it was almost wholesome, which is not probably what most people would expect. But it's just people coming to pay homage to their like everyman hero. And I was, my favorite was Dale from Vidalia brought him a box of onions, and a guy from Wisconsin brought him cheese, and a guy painted him a portrait of him and a dog that he wanted to give him. And it's just people saying, you're my hero. You and Pete, the one guy said, you and Pete Rose are my two heroes, and I got to meet one of them today. And he was just on his lunch break. He wasn't in town for the Masters, and I think there's it's a really good thing for golf to have people like that are in what can feel like a very elitist sport, to have a guy like that where the everyman wants to come hang out and smoke Marlboros and drink beer on the patio at Hooters in Augusta. And it's a different element that I think ultimately is good for the sport.
You know when he started doing that? 1997. Interaction with fans at the Hooters in Augusta, Georgia during the Masters started back in 1997. Of course, now he signs autographs, takes pictures, and a multi-year endorsement deal with not only Daly, but his son, John II, too. So, Hooters and John Daly just makes sense, right? Just makes sense.
It does.
The Bernard Longer, last time, he has won the green jacket twice. I didn't like him when he was younger. He was a foreigner in Germany, and he was on the Ryder Cup teams with all those other guys that were beating the Americans. But I've gotten to really enjoy watching him actually when he got involved in what is now the Champions Tour. And then I saw some of the interviews that he did leading up to the last time he would play there. I thought he was classy in the way he went out and was just an incredible impact in the game of golf.
Yeah, I think it's an incredible story. He comes from a village of 500 people where golf was not a thing. And, he just had such a reverence for the Masters. The fact that there's a guy who could watch this from afar, and he's like, even when you were watching, the Open in England or in Great Britain, it was always it moves around. But he's like, everyone watches the Masters, and it's always the same course, and then you find yourself here, and we've all grown up with it. And he put so much in perspective about that. But what I thought was fascinating about him is he basically lipped out a putt where he would have made the cut. He's not like he's not good enough to play there. He's shooting in the 1 or 2 over. He's shooting right on par. And he just said, I don't want to just be in the hunt. I want to win the thing. If I can't win the thing, I don't want to play it. And he just hit, the game has gotten so much longer, the course longer that, he's hitting long irons and hybrid woods and the greens where other guys are hitting 8 and 9 irons, and those greens are so fast he couldn't do it. But he's such a tactician that he's still right there, but he's like, it's just not good enough. He doesn't want to do that. That's why he dominates on the Champions Tour. He's still a great player at 67.
Yeah, he really is. All right, so that's first time you've been. And you obviously were able to get inside the gates, too. I know there's a media press room or whatever, and we've had different writers that have covered it. And Art Strickland was on with us on, Friday to kind of give us an update after the second round. So now that you've been there, we mentioned the roars and all that. Forget about the tournament itself. What was it like to experience Augusta National?
Well, the first thing is just the sheer natural beauty of it. I mean, it has to be, I was looking at it, I was like, this has to be like, if you're a zoologist, you are a zookeeper, you want to work at the San Diego Zoo. If you're a horticulturist, this must be your dream. It's just like the most beautiful grounds. Everything is perfect. What is remarkable about the place is the control they have over everything. And I don't mean that necessarily negative, but they, everyone there is on their best behavior because they're terrified of losing their passes. They control the concession prices. They control the merchandise. They control everything. And everything is so well run. The hordes of people that are behind the scenes, it's really not unlike, Disney World in a way, where on the front, everything looks perfect. And behind, there's a whole bunch of stuff that makes it go that they don't want you to see and that you don't see. And, it's just immaculate. There's, I was sitting there watching Scheffler on 18, and some guy came up and like bumped into me and grabbed me, and I looked over and it's Bijan Robinson standing next to me. He's like, "Hey man, I haven't seen you in a while." And I wrote a story about him when he was a sophomore, and he remembered me. He's like the nicest kid, but it's like they're just standing next to you, JJ Watt's walking around, Dwayne Wade's walking around. I saw Shane Beamer and a few other coaches, and they love it because no one's trying to get a picture of them with their cell phone, drinking a beer or doing anything. And everybody just rubs elbows, and everybody's kind of the same there. And it's a pretty, just the history, the reverence you have for the people that have walked around there, both the reporters and the golfers. It's a little bit breathtaking on the first day, and then you kind of ease into it, but you never get used to it.
Dave, great job, man. I'm glad you get a chance to go probably sleep in your own bed for the first time in almost 2 weeks. I hope you enjoyed the trip. But great stories coming out of what you did, which is not a surprise because that's what you do.
Well, I appreciate you, man. And I'm not complaining about the time now. It's not exactly rough work here, but I am excited to get home.
I know you weren't. Thanks for your time. Dave Wilson with ESPN.com.